All right, and we're alive, or at least I hope you can hear me. If anyone's in chat, please let me know. Audio's always been a big issue with me. So today's guest is Angie Moon, and she's a far left progressive here, trying to like subvert Western society with her cultural Marxism, as that's always been fun. But no, not on all honestly, I discovered Angie Moon like a few months ago on Twitter, and then I saw her videos, and yeah, she makes really good content. So, how's everything?
Very good, and thank you for the kind words and inviting me on to talk.
Yeah, of course, of course. So, I think the first thing I do want to talk to you about is the whole Aria Sarcella mess, and that's why I titled this stream with this name. Uh, yeah. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh. Well, at first, I didn't think much of her. I remember I knew of her like back when I was kind of an anti-SJW.
Mhm.
I did know of her, and I did know of her work, and I didn't think that she was a TERF or anything like that. I thought that she was an LGBT advocate and advocating for all the letters and anybody who falls under that umbrella. But it wasn't until recently, maybe like last year, maybe at the earliest, that I started seeing just cracks in that veneer of acceptance, and the truth came out. And a lot of people have accused me of being brainwashed by anybody, but no, I came to this conclusion by myself, through the help of other people's perspectives.
Okay, so like, what made you want to like respond to Aria Sarcella's video?
What made me want to respond to it is I was working on a series called Everything Wrong With, and that's where I take down any right wing anti SJW kind of YouTubers. So I did one for Blair White, I've done one for Lauren Chen, and I did one for Dave Rubin. And I wanted to do one for Ariel because I thought this would be really easy and something to get people to see the truth about her.
Okay, so one thing that happened unexpectedly is that she actually ended up responding to you, and this isn't like to make you feel bad or anything, but like normally these type of people they don't really respond to the smaller channels. They probably do know about it because someone probably sends them a video at some point. They ignore it, they move on their day, or if they're Dave Rubin, they just block you on Twitter. But Aria Sartella actually went out of her way to not only respond to you, she made a whole video on her channel responding to you. So like that was
Yeah, that was the only response that she made to me. So she only made a video. She did block me before I made the video, I believe. I think. I'm not sure. Maybe sometime between when I made the video and when she made her response. I think. Yeah, no, it was after I made my video before she made her response. So she never wrote anything to me particularly. So I was very surprised. It caught me off guard when I found out, wait, she actually responded to me. Like someone told me on Twitter, and I was like, no, 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 I can't believe this. You've got to be kidding me. So then I just went and looked, and I was like, oh my God, there it is. There's my video. And she didn't even at me or anything. And I was a little miffed at that because I wish she did at me. But no, I mean, it definitely caught me off guard. And I'm not an attention seeker or anything. I don't expect anyone I talk about to actually see what I say about them. So it definitely was surprising and definitely led to the growth of my channel for sure.
yeah. I was gonna ask you like, did it had a positive impact in your channel? Did you get any new subscribers? Did you get any hate comments or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely a lot of hate comments. I mean, some of the most vicious hate comments I've gotten from this Everything Wrong With series was definitely on Blair White's the videos I've made on her, the videos I've made on Lauren Chen, and then definitely the ones that I've made on Ariel as well. Not so much with Dave Rubin. I don't get as many people defending Dave Rubin, but yeah, those three YouTubers, I've definitely gotten a lot of her fans just defending her and calling me, you know, mean names. Not nothing that bad, but just acting really immature and not really hearing me out or what I have to say or assuming I'm an SJW.
Right, right. And for those who aren't quite familiar with you, how would you like tell us like describe your politics? If you don't want a label, that's fine, but just like left wing or I don't know, center left, I don't know.
I mean, I would say it's hard to describe because it depends on where I am in the world because everything is very relative depending on where the Overton window is. I know America, everything skews to the right, and that's where I'm from. So probably to a lot of Americans, I'd be very far left. While in Europe, I'd probably be somewhere definitely left of center, probably like So usually, like in the quadrants in the political compass, I get around 7, like -7, -7, like in the green left libertarian quadrant. I would say that a lot of my views are really just a mix of, general progressive views, populist views, and libertarian views.
Okay. So like, you said that you were like once like a part of that whole anti-SJW spear. Could you like tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the thing that was very different for me versus other anti-SJWs was I never was conservative. That was something that I never was. I may have had maybe a slightly more right libertarian beliefs on certain things, but I was always quite on the left. Like I always supported universal health care. I always supported equal rights. I always supported those sorts of things. But there were definitely some things that socially maybe I was a bit questionable about, not with, like, LGBT rights. I've always supported that. I mean, I'm bisexual myself, but, basically, I got into anti-SJW stuff back when I was in university. So I started university when I was 17 years old, so this was back in 2012.
You started
I
university in age of 17. Wow, that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I skipped a grade. So I graduated secondary school at 16, and then I was 17 at my first year of university, and I remember hearing just a lot of SJW sort of rhetoric. Some of it, looking back, was pretty reasonable. But some of it was definitely, stuff that I would say, I'm not so sure about for sure still. But anyway, I found, Shoe on Head's videos around that time, and that's definitely, and then I've been a huge fan of The Amazing Atheist since I was in secondary school. But I never got, like, too far down it. I think probably the most I would watch was Blair White and, Lauren Chen. But even then, I tuned out of Lauren Chen as soon as she came out as a Trump supporter.
You see, that was also kind of like an issue, the whole anti-SJW thing, because I do have that background of sort of being initially part of the anti-SJW spear, but then what really like sort of was what's a term you use sort of as a thing to make me leave, uh, what was basically
The
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 whole,
catalyst,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, was basically the whole anti-LGBT rhetoric I noticed coming from some of these people, and I first noted this with Computing Forever, who said marriage is between one man and one woman, and I was like, wait, what did I get into? What is this? I thought we were just calling out the radicals here, you know. Yeah, that was just like really bad.
Yeah, I noticed that too, like with a lot of xenophobia and anti-immigrant rhetoric. Like, I definitely noticed that, and it just made me nope out of there. I mean, I'm the child of an immigrant, and I'm an immigrant myself. So I was born in the U.S. to a Venezuelan mother, and then now I'm an American living in Ireland. So yeah, I guess I experienced that kind of immigrant experience in a couple different ways. And, seeing people just say awful things about immigrants and assume they're all lazy and leeches and all that, it was just really dehumanizing and incorrect because all I've known a lot of immigrants in the US and I'm an immigrant myself. And I know immigrants here in Ireland and we're all very hardworking.
Yeah, that's something I also began to notice, though. It wasn't just simply, oh, we just want, like, reasonable sort of, like, I guess you could say, laws on immigration. It did turn into first supporting the wall, but eventually a lot of people had a lot of far right views to the point that they were downright demonizing people migrating from other countries. And that's something I found quite concerning. So, what would you like see yourself now? Do you see yourself as still like an anti-SJW, but you just don't care about the community, or you're just like an SJW now and you're just like, oh, I hate cis white men now?
I'm neither of those. I would say I'm neither of them. I'm kind of just, I don't feel like either one is my camp. I definitely feel like, look, I think both sides definitely take it to an extreme. So I think I don't wanna say I'm a, like, radical centrist, enlightened centrist. No, I wouldn't say any of that. But I don't think playing tribalism is a good idea. I think what matters more than a label is what you believe. Like, I don't call myself a feminist, but it's not like I don't think feminists would be allies to me. Like, no, I think feminists can be perfectly good allies.
Okay, so one other video, cause I want to talk about some of your other videos if that's fine.
Oh
Um,
yeah, no problem.
what are your issues with Romy Millennial? Like, cause I'm not sure if I saw that video yet, or actually no, I did see it, but sure, from your point of view, like
Yeah,
what's
I've made multiple videos on her.
oh, okay,
I
alright.
think yeah, I think, what I find wrong with her is she's someone that isn't so blatant about her extremism, and it isn't so obvious, and I find her incredibly dangerous for that reason. You know, she is someone who's very smart, like, I don't think she's dumb at all. She knows how to code her message, she has definitely certain rhetorical sort of tools that she uses, like sandwiching. So she'll start off with something reasonable, then segue into what she wants you to think, and then end with something reasonable. And then, she has the same victim complex and sort of that like a lot of right wingers would have. And then she'll rail against identity politics, which I don't like identity politics either. But then she'll use it to her advantage, like Dave Rubin would. Like, oh yeah, I'm the gay conservative. When Lauren Chen went on Dave Rubin's show, I mean, it was, she was, the Asian conservative. And I think that is definitely a problem. And I think just her straight up denial of, what I guess, Black and Hispanic Americans go through in the US. I think that is definitely a huge problem with her thinking is when she made that video of people of color, you are not oppressed. It definitely reeked of the whole, it definitely seemed like SJW, but the other side of the coin because, she says, "Oh no, you can't possibly be suffering. You don't have it that bad." And that's definitely my problem with her. And a lot of people just don't take me seriously when I say she's really, far right. And even when I present the evidence, like I did with that fascist sort of supercut of all her fascist sort of views, people were still doubting it, even though it was right in front of her and from the horse's mouth herself.
Thanks LSP for that. Sorry, just reading the chat here. Um, so the thing with like Romy Millennial, I was actually a pretty big fan of her at one point. And that was because like she does like you say present herself as a little bit nicer, as a little bit more supposedly moderate than some of the other conservatives. You know, she's not like the other girls.
And
Uh,
it fools people, like, that's
yeah,
the thing, it fools people, and she'll hang out like, one of the things that definitely turned me off of her, besides her Trump, supporting views, was her, associating with white nationalists like Richard Spencer and Brittany Pettibone and Tara McCarthy. I never liked Brittany Pettibone or Tara McCarthy, I never liked them. I think that's definitely a big part of what got me away from the anti-SJW side was they're palling around with white nationalists and white supremacists, and they're acting like, "Oh, yeah, these are my allies," and I'm like, "No, no, no, they're the problem." Like I know that SJWs can be a bit annoying, but I don't think they're actually harmful like racists are.
so what about the cuz I know some of the talking points is that well, you know, we just want to build bridges with people even with people we disagree with.
I think if she really did disagree with Richard Spencer, why didn't she challenge him more? That's my question. Like, why didn't she had an opportunity to do that, and that's something that David Pakman did. David Pakman, I think I don't know if Cenk Uygur actually interviewed Richard Spencer or something like that, but David Pakman for sure, he questioned Richard Spencer and actually challenged him and actually, held his feet to the fire and all that. And I'm like, Lauren Chen is very capable of doing that. She just didn't do it because she wanted to pander to that right wing, white racist audience.
Right. And like what are your thoughts of Blair White cuz I think you've made a few videos on her.
I started off liking her. I mean, I don't think that she is a racist. Like, I don't think she's as bad as Lauren Chen or Lauren Southern. But and I actually like her sense of humor. Her sassiness is something that I very much like. And, because I'm just a big fan of The Amazing Atheist. So I did like that. But the problem with her is that she is right wing and she is a Trump supporter. And I don't think that she thinks critically about why she supports Trump. Like when she made a video about why she supported him, it was not well researched at all, and I've seen her, articles for the Post Millennial because she's dabbling in writing just like Lauren Chen is. But what I noticed about both these right-wing YouTubers is they're not trained journalists, and I don't think that they have as much political knowledge as they seem like they try to make themselves seem like they have. And I think that it's very lowest common denominator content with Blair White. Like, I find that it's very dumbed down, and she sounds like a broken record. And I find that she does invalidate trans people and bullies trans people that she doesn't like. And that is just something that I cannot accept because I was bullied myself. Not I'm not transgender, but I was bullied myself for other reasons. And I just don't think I can support someone who bullies people.
Right. And could you sort of elaborate on sort of the issues you might have had with Blair White and her statements on the LGBT community and stuff like that?
Sure. I think what happens is she does play a lot into respectability politics. So, like, the trans people that she will support are ones that are doing everything right, and right in quotation marks. I don't have video on, so I can't really show myself doing that. But, it means people who are, transitioning in the way that Blair believes is right. So you have to go on hormones and you have to do get surgery. And if you don't do these things, you're not trans enough for her. And I think the other thing that I don't like is how she is very against children transitioning, even though when she was a kid herself, she had dysphoria and would have definitely benefited from socially transitioning as a child. And I think that her views on children transitioning are not well researched and could be. Like, I think that is something that I think both the far left and the right wing can definitely get better on, is being more scientifically literate.
So, like, what is the science on children transitioning? Because I hear a lot of people say that, like, oh, children shouldn't transition, they're too young, they can't decide, what they are. They're gonna make a decision that's irreversible, that type of rhetoric.
I think what people mean when they say children transitioning, like, it is good for their mental health. I've seen studies supporting that. But the thing is, what children go through in transition, and we're talking like children who are before puberty, they're not getting hormones. They're not getting surgery. That's not happening until, they're in their late teens or even 18 years old. What they're usually going through is name changes. Like, those things are temporary. They're not permanent. A name change you can change at any point. Or using different pronouns or wearing different clothes, cutting their hair. Those things can definitely increase the child's self-esteem. And I think when parents are more supportive, trans people are happier and they're less likely to harm themselves.
Yeah,
And I think,
because you're going.
yeah, like, one thing that Blair White said, and I think I touched upon it in a video, is she was just assuming that everybody wants children. And I think that is definitely a problem in her thinking. Like, no, not everyone wants children. And I think a lot of conservatives need to think about the fact that adoption isn't bad and we need to stop frowning upon it. I mean, there are a lot of children out there that are stuck in an orphanage and don't have a loving home. Why should we bring more children onto this earth?
Okay. And do you have like any comments on, let's say, transgender teenagers using puberty blockers?
They've been proven to be safe as far as I've read. Now, I'm not a scientist myself, nor do I study it, but it does seem like they are very safe and they are reversible. And it's not the same as hormones.
All right. Yeah, some people would argue that some of these things could like maybe mess with your endocrine system. So I have heard that yeah, they are reversible. It's not the same thing as hormone replacement therapy, but they could still have some severe side effects, and that the science isn't completely in yet. It's something I still have to study more for it. But like, if there is evidence that it does work, or at least it does help with the transitioning of people, I don't see why we can't, on a case by case basis, do this if the physician agrees that's the road to take. So let's see. I mentioned about Blair White, Romy Millennial. I really don't want to talk about Dave Rubin because I feel like that's kind of beating a dead horse. But like,
Yeah.
you know,
Like, that
uh,
video I made of him was really funny, and I I went all out on editing it. That was definitely fun to make.
It's really weird because there's actually a video of me defending Dave Rubin from my old anti-SJW days, and I just look back at it and cringe. Uh, like I've really changed a lot since then. I mean, I'm still for the most part the same. Like I think I would still say like do you think like there's some things the anti-SJWs were kind of right on, even if they did a bad way advocating for these sort of issues in a
I think
sense?
mostly, like,
Yeah.
with humor and stuff like that. I think, like, my sense of humor is very un-PC, and I think that is probably what pisses people off about me, is that I'm not afraid to make or laugh at, inappropriate kind of un-PC jokes. I personally like to, laugh at those sorts of jokes, and I think maybe I am a bit old school in my sense of humor. I know I'm old school in the way I dress. I'm definitely old school in my sense of humor, for sure. And yeah, I think that's something that, like, I've seen a lot of news recently about, like, with the whole, protests and, unrest in the United States. There are a lot of things that are being pulled down, like Little Britain being pulled off of Netflix and BBC iPlayer. I've seen Gone with the Wind being pulled off of HBO Max or whatever. And I just don't think that's the answer, nor is that going to improve things. That's just something that is, window dressing. It's just box ticking. It's like, okay, great. And what is that going to improve? Like, I'm somebody who's very much against censorship, and I don't think that we should be hiding things from the past that are offensive. I think the answer to that is talking more about it. And I definitely consider myself very much a free speech advocate.
Alrighty then. So let me ask you something. Is hate speech free speech?
Ooh, that one's a tough one. And I would say, as long as it isn't a threat, yes. I mean, that is something that definitely hurts me to say, but you know what? I want to be as consistent and principled as possible when it comes to free speech. And that's probably something where I would agree more with the American approach on free speech than I would with the European approach on free speech. And I think the answer to hate speech is more speech. Let's talk about it, let's expose it. And, you know, free speech isn't freedom from consequences.
Okay. So you mentioned something about that you have this sort of old school style, and I definitely noticed that in sort of your Twitter posts and stuff like that. So why dress like a hippie? Like what's up with that?
Oh, yeah. So I basically have had an obsession with the 60s ever since I was 14. So when I was that age, I was bored one day and decided to watch Austin Powers, and I just fell in love with, like, the music and the fashion of the 60s, and I just started listening to the music of the 60s, and I thought, "Okay, why not dress like it's the 60s?" I mean, I love that style, so I started doing that. So I started buying tons and tons of vintage clothes. So I started when I was in university, once I got away from my parents, I started buying a bunch of vintage clothes and wearing them all the time, and that's how people saw me, and I cut my hair in a very 60s mod sort of way, and I just love the way that it looks. It definitely makes me stand out, and I'm a shy person. I think that's how what I do to overcompensate is dress in such a different way and dress so outlandishly that people can't help but notice me, because I always felt that I was someone that people wouldn't notice, and I always felt quite invisible, so I decided, well, I'm gonna get people to notice me by dressing the way I do. And I feel so good when I dress like it's still the 60s or the 70s. I definitely feel good, and I find that it does flatter me for sure.
Well, I think that's really cool though. And I don't know that many people that actually like to dress up like the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah, it's not common at all. I mean, lots of people wear vintage clothes now, but it's just a lot of people here dress like it's the 80s or 90s, but I don't think that that's vintage enough, because that's definitely stuff that I grew up around and knew a lot about, so to me, that just seemed normal.
Right, and that would be more retro. So I noticed another passion you have besides talking about current events and politics. You also have a passion for music as well, and I noticed you also have a blog and a Facebook page where you talk about some of these like rock bands and whatnot. So
Oh,
was
yeah.
was around the age of 14? Is that when you also got into the music as well?
Yes, yes. So I got into the Beatles first, and then from there, on through all the
It's
classic
always
rock.
the
So that's
Beatles first, by the way. Just wanted to comment.
yeah. Everyone says that it's like, "That's the gateway band," and I'm like, "That's the gateway band for me." My parents are boomers, so yeah, I did hear a bit of music from that time period before I was obsessed with it, and I did like some of it. But I think it took, me being a teenager and really exploring it for myself to really appreciate it. I mean, I always appreciated old movies and stuff like that and old technology like vinyl because that was around me when I was a kid. But I think as a teenager, I took on a new appreciation, and definitely that's when I wanted to actually start living in that time period, and I wish I could. I still do, even though I know there's a lot of things that were worse back then, even just petty stuff. We're not just talking about like the easy, low ball, low hanging fruit stuff like the discrimination and things like that. But I'm talking about like very inconvenient things, and I'm writing a post about that right now.
Oh, okay, it sounds really interesting. I'll read it when it comes out. So,
Yeah.
what are some like your favorite bands that like
Oh my
you've
god.
always listened to?
Okay, so when I was younger, like starting in classic rock, so I really like British invasion music. So, I love the Beatles, I love the Who, I love the Kinks, I love the Small Faces, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix. I think I'm more into the British side of things than I would be into the American side of things, but I do like a few American groups like CCR and Jefferson Airplane.
Do you like Jefferson Starship, or is that
I don't listen to them as much. Like I've
okay?
only listened
That's
really to
fine.
Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Don't worry about it. So, like, but are there any like other American bands that interest you? I'm more familiar with the British stuff myself because like that was the
Yeah.
thing that was huge back then. But there are definitely some pretty good American bands. I think the Grateful Dead.
Yeah,
Uh,
I also really like Heart. I forgot about Heart. I absolutely
oh,
adore
you
them,
can't
and
forget
Ann
about
Wil
Heart. Come on.
Oh, yeah, Ann Wilson's definitely one of my biggest idols for sure, and someone that I could relate a lot to as someone who's moved around a lot and struggled with their weight when they were younger. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely like when I was reading her autobiography, I was like, yeah, this was basically my life kind of.
And I'm sure I already know the answer to this, but like you've listened to Fleetwood Mac, right?
Oh yeah, I love them. And not just like, the pop era, like Rumors, Rhiannon's, that sort of stuff. No, I like Peter Green as well. And I think that's definitely a forgotten part of Fleetwood Mac history.
That's really cool. So, like, have you in your life ever found other people that are also like interested in this type of music? Because I live in Miami, so it's mostly just The Weeknd and some
Oh
of these
yeah.
other bands, Jason Derulo, which is fine if you're into that. It's no hate on you, but it's it's cool if you can find people that are
Yeah.
also the same.
Definitely from time to time, yeah, in university, but I don't think I've ever found a lot of people in real life who are as obsessed with it as I am. I think that's where I just take everything to the next level is how obsessed I am with classic rock. I mean, everybody I think has their own obsession, even though like a lot of people think that obsessions are just like an autism thing. No, I think everybody has some sort of obsession with something. I mean, and no, I mean I've seen it. It's just sometimes I worry that I tire people out with my classic rock talk, and yeah.
So, do you like also invest your money in like collections and stuff like that? Do you collect vinyl or CDs or any of that of the sort?
Mostly vintage clothes. I mostly get vintage clothes, but, vinyl, yeah, I've definitely collected vinyl. Most of it is back at my parents' house, and it's just hard to move it around because I did move overseas, so I would like to be reunited with my vinyl collection, but I'm not buying any more vinyl until I have a permanent place to live, and with the nature of my husband's job, it I don't know how long we're gonna be having sort of a nomadic sort of life.
Hmm. And you've mentioned before that like you have sort of moved around. You said you're originally from Chicago.
Yes. Yeah, that's where I'm originally from, and I lived there for about half my life, but not, like, all in a row. So I lived there from birth to age 11, and then I moved to Texas, and then I moved to Florida, and I did not like living in Florida at all, so that's when I decided to go to Canada, and then I decided to go back to Chicago, and now I'm in Ireland, and I've been in Ireland for the past 4 years.
That's pretty cool. Do you see yourself living somewhere else, or is Ireland just your newfound home?
Oh no, I definitely want to leave Ireland. I definitely am bored with it here. I'm not in Dublin, so outside of Dublin, it does get a bit boring. I mean, although I've heard like I know that Galway and Cork are very nice. I don't live in Galway, Cork, or Dublin, but yeah, like I'm definitely bored of it. My husband's Irish, so he definitely wants a change, and he's been in the same city for his whole university career. So he did his bachelor's in the town we're in. He did his master's, and then he's doing his PhD. He has a couple years to go of that. So in total, he'll have been spending almost a decade in the town that we are in. So he definitely wants a change, and he's definitely looking at mainland Europe. It sucks that England is going through Brexit right now, and England's not doing well with the whole coronavirus, and it sucks because I did want to move to England. That was actually my dream, was to move to England because I absolutely like love the culture and everything like that. But that wasn't in the cards for me. But there's always visiting, and I like to try new things.
We'll see how it turns out in the future for you. So, I had something I was gonna ask you, but it's sort of kind of slipped my mind. Um, are there any like other type of like music like you've gotten? Okay, I just remembered it.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of like classic rock and that sort of stuff, I noticed you also like to talk about the history of it. You don't. It's not just like listening to music and that sort of stuff. Could you tell us like anything? Because I noticed I think you have a series study about the diversity of classic rock or something like
Yeah.
that.
So the blog is called The Diversity of Classic Rock, and it's basically just I originally began it because I was doing radio, and I actually wanted to be a DJ. That was actually my goal here, was to be a DJ and host my own classic rock show on a classic rock radio station. But as we all know, radio is kind of a dying medium, and everybody's listening to podcasts, and who listens to the radio outside of the car? But anyway, I had my own radio show while I was in university for about half the time I was in university, so about 3 years of it. And um, yeah, I remember at one station, they wanted me to play more diverse, music, so not just classic rock. I wanted to be very classic rock focused, so I tried to grab as much stuff that was from the 60s, 70s, and even the 80s as much as possible. But then I remember they were criticizing me for playing so much classic rock, and they were like, "You're playing a bunch of old white man music." And I just said, "No, that's not true. They don't all have the same sort of story. They're not all just a bunch of old white men." And that was when I came up with the idea for the diversity of classic rock. And basically, I sat on the idea for a year because this was when I was 19. And then when I was 20, I decided to start the diversity of classic rock. So I started the blog as part of a school project, and I just kept going with it. So I started off with stories about the musicians and like what identities they are. So I talked about Black musicians, Native American musicians, Asian musicians, musicians from Africa, musicians who are LGBT, musicians who are Jewish, Romani, Muslim, yeah, Hispanic, yeah, definitely. So I tried to make sure that I shared how diverse the musicians really are, and I think my blog has definitely gained a lot of traction. But there was only so much that I could talk about when you talk about identity in those sorts of groups. So I needed to expand and think about it as different stories and different themes. So I came up with just different ideas for different themes. So one of them was like talking about educated rock musicians, ones who are vegetarians, ones who made it later in life, ones who started when they were very young, and ones who got screwed over by the industry. So I try to theme them and tell the stories behind the songs and the musicians, and not just talk about the ones that are very well known.
Cool. And are there any other genres of music that interest you, like jazz or I don't know, uh,
Nothing as much as
anything?
classic rock, but I do like other kinds of music. So I do like reggae and ska. I like city pop. I like vaporwave. I like disco. Disco is definitely something that I grew on as a kid, and I like R&B. So I love listening to Motown and Stax. I definitely like listening to that.
Yeah. I got into the city pop game, like a lot of people through vaporwave.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just it's incredible. It's a huge freaking world that I never knew existed, and it's amazing.
Oh yeah. Like that's the thing. People limit themselves to music that's in their language. So, if you're just an English speaker and that's all you know, a lot of times you don't think about going outside of that, and I think nowadays with the internet, it's so much easier to go outside of it. I mean, look at the popularity of K-pop.
You're not into K-pop, are you?
No. No, I'm not into a lot of pop music. I mean, the only pop music I'd be into is, like, stuff from the '60s and '70s, and even then, I find that a lot of it is a little boring to me, and I prefer to listen to harder rock.
Yeah, that's fine. You can only listen to "I Wanna Hold Your Hand" until it gets boring. But that's pretty cool though. City pop is something that I've actually grown a new passion for. But I have a friend that's even more crazy about it than I am. So I got into classic rock because my mom is from that era, So Beatles, and Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd. But then my friend, my best friend, he was also really into it, and he introduced me to bands I've never even heard of, like really obscure rock bands and stuff like that. And then I got him into city pop like 2 or 3 years ago. I just like sent him a few songs, and I'm like, here. And by the way, my friend's really picky about music. He doesn't really listen to anything after like 1989. So
That sounds very me.
yeah,
I
exactly.
don't listen to much from the '90s besides, Britpop. Like, I really like Oasis, but that's about it.
No, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm kind of like that, but I'm a little bit more open-minded than he is. And I sent him a few city pop songs, thinking that I don't know, he might not like it, but maybe he'll like one. And he said, okay, no, this stuff is actually pretty good. And he got more into it than I got into it, to the point that he knows more like bands and groups about city pop than I do. And he still likes the other stuff. He still likes classic rock and jazz and that sort of stuff. But like, he got so much into it that in his huge folder collection of music, he has more city pop artists than he has classic rock artists.
That's
It's
incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. He's also collected a lot of vinyl, from Japan, of a lot of these artists. And let me tell you,
Oh,
these
that's amazing.
yeah, yeah, because a lot of these like albums, they have a really nice aesthetic to it. Like that's another
Oh,
thing I
yeah.
like about city pop as well. It's not just the music, but there's a strong aesthetic, even though it's kind of a meme. But
I love it though. I mean, that's the thing, like, it's just really cool. Like, I love the whole city pop kinda relaxed anime sort of very '80s, '90s sort of look. And it just brings you back to a time that you'd never lived in, but you feel like you lived in it.
yeah, I don't know how to explain that to other people, but that's exactly what most people feel about this. Like, it's nostalgia, but it's nostalgia they've never really actually had. It's just really weird. It's just really funny though. So, let's see. I don't know if there's any other
Yeah,
political.
like, I'm an atheist, so
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I don't think, like, the whole past lives thing
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense, but I'm like,
Right.
"But what if?" But then there's that part of me who's like, "What if, though? I mean, what if you actually did live back then? Is that why you were into that?" But no, that doesn't make any sense.
No, but it's just like fun to think about at the
Oh,
same
yeah,
time.
for
So,
sure.
okay.
I
So you
mean,
mentioned that you are an atheist, but you do have like a Jewish background, right?
yes.
So how does it feel to be the only Jew in Ireland right now?
I'm definitely, like, being facetious there, like, I don't know any other Jews here. I know there are other ones here, but I've never met any of them. So how am I so sure that they exist? No, I'm kidding. But, no, I don't know any other Jewish people where I am. I mean, in the town that I'm in, there was a pogrom, I think, in the late 19th or early 20th century. I can't remember when, but yeah, like, there's no Jewish population here at all. And basically my parents are, an interfaith, interracial marriage. So, I was never enough for anyone or I was too much of this for people. So, like, my dad just didn't want to spend money on Hebrew school for me. So he tried to put it off as long as possible, but eventually he couldn't put it off. So he made me go to Hebrew school just to please my grandpa. So, like, when I was 10, they took me to the rabbi's house, and the rabbi, like, lived not that far away from us. So we went over to her house, and they were like, "Okay, we're gonna go enroll her in Hebrew school, and we're gonna join this synagogue." And they said, "Oh, your mom's not Jewish. You're gonna have to convert." And I said, "But why do I need to convert? I don't need to convert to something. If I identify as a Jew, why am I not one?" And it was just so arbitrary, and it didn't make any sense. And they were gonna make me convert. I never ended up converting, but I remember They said, "Oh," this was when I was 10. They said, "Oh, you're gonna have to go naked into a pool of water while someone watches, and that is how you convert." And my parents were like, "Hell no, she's not
Wait,
doing that."
that's a practice? I had no idea. And you said
Yeah,
her.
yeah, no, it's
Is
it's
that
the mikvah, basically. So it's this,
okay?
sort of pool, this ritual sort of pool. You'll see it in, like, the Netflix series Unorthodox. So it's not just used for conversions, but it's also used if you're an Orthodox woman, if you get your period, you're not considered clean, so you have to sleep in a separate bed from your husband, and then after your period, you have to go into this pool and cleanse yourself, basically. And then then you're in the clear. But yeah, it's definitely a crazy religion. I was never that religious. I was only reform, basically. But it definitely, I never felt like I fit in, and they were saying things that didn't make sense, and eventually, it just started cracking apart and it didn't make any sense. So it cracked like an egg, and then eventually I was like, yeah, this whole God thing doesn't make any sense. I don't believe in it at all. By the time I was 10, I just realized that, and I was like, yep, I'm done. And I never went back to Hebrew school. I never got a bat mitzvah. And I think it helped that I moved and I was having some issues with depression. So my dad just basically said, "Yeah, we're not going to go put her back in Hebrew school, and she's not getting a bat mitzvah." So yeah, my depression got me out of something and did something useful.
Oof. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Um. All right, so like that's pretty interesting. It's just it's not every day I hear about someone with an Hispanic background and also has a Jewish background.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
yeah.
whenever people hear that, they assume that I'm Sephardic, which no, I am not. I just sound it, but I'm not. I mean, my mom is from Venezuela, my dad's from America. So yeah, like it wasn't a common mix at all. Like, I did know in my synagogue there were 2 siblings who were, Cuban Jews. So I did know other Hispanic
Oh,
Jews, I did know
Jubin.
them.
Yeah, I know that's the
Yeah,
thing.
but, I didn't know anyone else really.
It's fine. Religion's overrated anyway.
Oh, very much so. Like, I'm so glad I'm out of it because it brought a lot of stress into my life, and, I feel free now. And afterwards, I mean, my grandma was just telling me about how, "Oh, Judaism is so sexist, so, like, it's good that you left."
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, I don't really have anything else though, unless I don't know. Do you have any like sort of thoughts on the whole current situation right now in America with Black Lives Matter?
Oof,
And
it's a lot to unpack, and I'm not sure if I would be the most qualified to talk about it. I'm not really black. I mean, I have put in the past that I'm 1/16 black in my bio, which is true. I mean, my grandfather was a quarter black Venezuelan, but I don't look black. My brother does have an afro though, and but he's never really had too much trouble. In everyday life. But I never really got discriminated against much based on my appearance because I'm very, very pale. But I did get discriminated against whenever I was seen with my family. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot to think about for sure. And all I know is that I'm just very fortunate to have left America because I definitely realize I'm one of the lucky privileged ones who left and I don't think I'd ever come back because I don't know. America's just a very race obsessed country, and it definitely has a racism problem and definitely, a bad culture in the police.
yeah, I'm sad to say that with the whole principles of freedom and liberty, we still have a really big race issue, and it definitely gets really bad in certain areas. Miami's like no has a known problem for police brutality as well, and
Yeah.
also police corruption. A lot of police here are also involved with a lot of drug smuggling, criminals, and stuff like that. So that's always fun.
Yeah, I used to live like 2 hours away from Miami, and we would go to Miami quite often. And I remember my dad would always make a joke of "Get your passports out. This isn't America anymore." As a joke. I mean, my parents both speak Spanish, so they do very well in Miami. They can just speak to everybody just fine.
Yeah, hablas español?
Not very well, no.
Okay, yeah,
No,
that's fine. Yeah, don't worry
I
about it.
understand everything perfectly. Like, that's the embarrassing thing is I kind of repressed my knowledge of Spanish because I was like the one Hispanic kid in my secondary school. Not secondary school. No, no, by that point, there were plenty of Hispanic kids in my class, but, in primary school, no, there weren't very many, so it was I definitely stood out like sore thumb, and people would make fun of me.
Mm, okay, that's pretty cool. By the way, Angie Moon, that's just like a stage name, right?
Yeah, no, Moon isn't my real last name, but eventually I'm going to make sure it is because, once I get my Irish citizenship, which shouldn't be too long, yeah, I'm gonna go just get my name changed over here because it's just easier to do so than in America, so, yeah, I wanna be Angie Moon. Like, Angie is my real name, like, short for Angela, but yeah. But Moon isn't my real last name. I chose it just because, well, I'm a big fan of The Who and Keith Moon.
That's really cool. Any other sort of thoughts you have on the political climate? I don't know if you want to talk about Trump or anything like that.
Ooh, I definitely don't like Trump. That's all I know is, America's definitely in big trouble. I mean, I'm no fan of Biden, and I know that, yeah, maybe things will be marginally better under him, but I'm not expecting much to be fundamentally different. Like, I don't expect there to be rainbow, sunshine, smiles, everything is great. I think if anything, people will become very complacent once there's a Democrat. If there's a Democrat in the White House, there's definitely going to be a lot of complacency and people not pushing for change. Like, I
And
think we've
isn't
seen it
that
with Bush.
sure? But isn't that better than what we have now? I mean, that at least means at least a few more millions of Americans would get back on, sort of, giving people, more access to healthcare. Well, not just access to healthcare, actually having it.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the best
I
plan,
suppose,
it's
yeah.
something.
Like, I suppose, yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen people make that argument. Like, I remember on Twitter, I was just like talking about like Nancy Pelosi wanting to get rid of a certain amount of student loan debt for people, and that would leave 16 million Americans debt free, and that's great. But I think we need to keep pushing for more, as always. Like, I don't think we should ever stop pushing for more. And I think maybe Joe Biden is easier to push than Trump is for sure.
I mean, yeah, like Biden is not a perfect candidate. He's a very flawed
Oh
politician
yeah,
for
and
sure. But at this point, I think a house plan is better than what we have right now.
definitely.
And with
Like,
it,
I don't know.
yeah,
I
go
just
on.
feel like it's all a mess. Like, I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna go back to America anytime soon. My husband's just like, "Nope, we're not going back. I don't care if I don't think he's gonna get a job offer in America." And he's like, if I'm good enough to get a job offer in America, I'm sure I can get a job offer somewhere else in Europe." So, yeah, it's probably gonna be staying in Europe for me.
That's fine. Uh, and what else I was gonna say? Uh, I think that's all I had to sort of ask you for now. If there's anything you want to clarify now, like now's your chance.
No, all I wanna say is just, check out, Crazy on Classic Rock. So if you just go to my blog, it's crazyonclassicrock.com. You can see me fangirl over classic rock there. It's definitely what I love doing. That's what I wanted to be known for more than politics. But, I accidentally fell into politics, and that's been just such an adventure, and definitely have met people through that, and I don't regret talking about it. And this has been such a good chat.
That's good. So for anyone that's still listening, though, we're still going on to COVID-19, even if we're starting to open up the economy. So please be sure to wash your hands whenever you can. If you can't wash your hands in the bathroom, then just carry a little bottle of hand sanitizer. Wear a mask in public. Try to stay 6 feet away. Between people, and of course, until then, stay safe and stay classy. All right, so we're off.